Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are tuned to the Nighttime Podcast, focused on the fringe of Canada.
During my time covering dark Canadian stories here on Nighttime, I've come across a lot. Missing persons cases, unsolved crimes, acts of mass murder, both attempted and carried out. But every so often, I cover a story that simply stops me in my tracks. And tonight's episode is going to be one of those such cases. Amanda Todd was still a child when she began to share her love of singing with viewers around the world on YouTube. Perhaps she was hopeful that she'd be discovered like Justin Bieber, another young Canadian YouTuber recently had. But in the end, just like Justin, Amanda too found a sort of fame as a result of sharing her talents on YouTube. But tragically, Amanda Todd is now known around the world not for her voice or for her charm, but as a cautionary tale about the evils that lurk all around us. One of the people who was moved by Amanda's performances managed to sneak into her personal life and infiltrate her inner circle. When Amanda shared an intimate photo, this anonymous predator would begin an odyssey of sextortion, harassment, and cyber stalking that would only end in Amanda's death. Since then, at least 50 million people have heard Amanda's story, largely as a result of a viral video she made shortly before her death. In this video, shot on a webcam and in black and white, Amanda shares her heartbreaking story by flipping through a series of index cards as she visibly sobs. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, we're going to hear Amanda's story by someone who has stood by Amanda throughout it all and still to this day carries on her search for justice and continues her legacy. Our guest tonight is Amanda Todd's mother, and the well-known internet safety and mental health advocate, Miss Carol Todd.
Amanda Todd was just 15 years old when she took her own life in October 2012. The Port Coquitlam teen posted this video on YouTube describing how she met someone online. He told her she was beautiful and she agreed to flash him. A year later, the image was posted on social media. She was victimized online and bullied at school.
He did more than cyberbully. I don't even want to call it that. He cyber victimized young girls. He cyber intimidated young girls. He extorted and harassed these young girls.
For people who haven't met you or don't know what you're up to today, why don't you just give me a short introduction of who you are and and what you're doing today?
Who am I? My name is Carol Todd. I'm the mother of Amanda Todd, who died by suicide in October of 2012. My other life is that I am an educator in British Columbia, and I love working with kids. It's special.
And very much an advocate. Even in my credits, I refer to you as an advocate for mental health and internet safety. Is that fair to say? Do you see yourself filling that role?
I think so. When you look at Amanda's story, her story encompassed bullying, cyberbullying, exploitation, and ultimately mental health. And I created the legacy in her namesake and in her memory, based on all the things that encompassed her story.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people will hear your story and assume that this happened to Amanda, and from there you became an advocate for the various things we just mentioned. But it seems like you had a background in this sort of work even before this happened to Amanda, as an educator working with young children. Like, it seems like the position Amanda ended up in, a lot of parents would be less prepared than you were with your background, I would think.
Well, my education degree is in special education. So in the 35 years I've been teaching, I've been working with children with complex needs and with learning disabilities. And in the last 10 years, I took on a role in my school district as a coordinator for assistive technology. So putting technology into the hands of kids with unique differences, right?
Okay.
So I was well versed in the realms of technology and what it would bring. Also, Amanda had learning disabilities. So she had a language-based learning disability, and she was ADHD. And even though I'm a teacher mom, my kids attended the same elementary school that I taught at. And we noticed that Amanda was frustrated a lot she was frustrated a lot in her daycare preschool. And then in kindergarten and grade 1, that inability to process language. So I had her assessed, and she came up with a learning disability at the end of grade 1, which is very rare, because I'm not sure what it's like in your province, but in our province, it's and a psych assessment isn't recommended until the end of grade 3. So knowing that Amanda had these difficulties and challenges early was a good thing. And so as best I could, I was able to advocate for her with tutors to get her up to speed, which never really happened because her processing was so skewed that she just had problems understanding language if it was spoken too fast or in colloquial terms, right?
Okay.
Which I believe affected her as she grew up in processing language with her peers. Like, you know how fast girls especially talk, right? And so things just whipped back and forth, and Amanda struggled, but being as proud as she was, she would never let on that she would not understand or have difficulties in school and in her social life, right? And so when you think about it, I started to understand why she was misbehaving in class. And so if you misbehave in class, the teacher asks you to leave, and then you don't have to show that you don't know what's going on.
And
it's funny.
Escape, yeah.
It is an escape. And I didn't realize how it really affected her until we were at the movies one night. And we had gone, I don't know if you remember when the Twilight series
Absolutely
came out, right?
I'm on Team Edward. I don't know if you're familiar with the characters.
I'm on Team Edward too. And so we were watching the movie, and I don't know which episode it was, right? But it's very fast moving and switching, right? To all the different characters and storylines and plots. And halfway through it, Amanda said to me, "Mom, it's going so fast. Can you help me understand what's going on?" And it was at that point that it just kind of, I realized that this is how her brain works, right? If it's going too fast, she doesn't comprehend it. And so those are part of her struggles as a young person.
Why don't you tell me a bit about, like, with her as a young person, why don't you tell me a bit about, like, your family and her childhood? I just want to get it kind of an idea of kind of the environment that Amanda was kind of brought into when she joined your family.
Our family, how do you explain our family? We were a typical family, right? Amanda's dad and I split up when the kids were, I think Amanda was about 10 and my son was 13. And then the kids started doing visitations back and forth. And so that had some complexities with it. Oftentimes the kid's father, Amanda's dad, and I wouldn't see eye to eye on parenting. And so with Amanda being a girl and being high-spirited and being a bit of a challenge, it kind of, it was a struggle, like going back and forth. Eventually, Amanda went to live with her dad when she was 13 because she felt that my rules were a little too strict and dad's rules would be a bit better and meet her needs. When the kids were growing up, it was typical, right? We were a busy family, and then their downtime was watching movies on TV, or you give them technology time. And what we've learned is that Amanda took that little bit of technology time and spun it into whatever happened with her. Starts with YouTube and then advances into other things. And Amanda kept up. Now I have to say that she had a birthday. She had a late November birthday, and it was one of those snowstorms in the lower mainland in Vancouver in '96, and it rarely snows out here, right? But that year that she was to be born, it snowed and it snowed and it snowed. And I don't know if it made a difference, but that little girl had an affinity. She always wanted to find the snow. And so every year around her birthday, she would be checking the weather report up to a month before to see if it would snow. And it might have, in her 15 years of her life, it probably snowed 3 times on her birthday.
Wow.
And so in her high spiritedness, right, she would, one year she had a bunch of girls over for a birthday party and it started to snow, right? And so she asked if they could go out and if mom could find all the snow gear. Well, there were 10 girls here, right? And so quickly did a neighborhood phone call thing, and we came up with enough snow gear for 10 girls to go playing outside in the front yard with snow.
Wow. I didn't realize the climate was that different there. I would have assumed you got not as much as we would down here east, but I thought you got quite a bit. But wow.
No, this winter, it snowed probably twice.
Okay.
And out of the 2 times, we might have gotten maybe an inch and a half.
So 3 snowstorms or 3 snowfalls during her 15 birthdays. That's like statistically, that's impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. She was just full of life. And you know what? I thought that as an adult, she would definitely create her own business, be out there, because she was a go-getter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing about her that almost seems contradictory is you describe, like, in school she had trouble with communication and language, as well as like when you described her having a hard time following the plot of a kind of crappy movie, but with a busy plot. But it seems like that was also her strong suit, because when she, like, with singing and being on YouTube and doing like kind of the creative stuff, which is a form of communication, it seemed like that is something she excelled at. She did. Yeah. How do you explain that?
Because your brain's broken up into verbal versus nonverbal, right brain, left brain people. And so your right brain is catered to the nonverbal, your artistic, your woodworking, trades, art. And then your left brain is those individuals who are academically inclined, the English majors, the engineering majors, the science majors. And so very different. And so obviously it was her nonverbal right brain that was so much stronger. Right?
Yeah. And like a lot of people who know her story will know that she was performing songs and singing on YouTube. Was music a big part of her life, or was that just something she was doing to, to put herself out there?
You know what? She was always singing.
Yeah.
Singing and drawing and painting, even when she was really little. And then the singing calmed her, right? I was always amazed because she couldn't remember like when teachers would tell you to memorize a poem or how to do multiplication facts, she could never remember those. I was always amazed how she could remember all the words to a song. Right? So that tells you that the brain, the two hemispheres definitely work differently. I credit, and technology is part of that right brain also. And when she was in grade 3, she had an excellent teacher who taught the kids how to do PowerPoints and use technology to express their knowledge, right? And Amanda did really well on that. And she just went a step further and figured out at age 9 how to get the camera, a camera that took video, not hooked up to Wi-Fi, because back then we didn't have those. She learned how to take the SD card out of the camera, pop it into a laptop computer, download it, then upload it, and then share her singing videos, right? And she was doing that, and she just wanted to express herself that way. You got to remember too, way back when she was 10 years old, 11 years old, Justin Bieber was just rising up, right? And how did he get found? He got found on YouTube by Usher. And so every young person, little girl, little boy's dream was to be found on YouTube and become famous, just like Justin.
And I don't know how much of this is almost like storytelling that the media put together when telling Amanda's story versus how it actually played out. But often there's the story told of her wanting a webcam and you, as well as Amanda's dad, disagreeing on whether or not she should have one. Is there truth to that story? And if so, how did she go about getting a webcam? How did that happen?
You must have saw that on the Fifth Estate.
I believe so. Yeah.
I was always against webcams, especially for young people. Even now, I am a firm believer that sometimes your webcam can turn on by accident. Oftentimes you hear stories where computers get hacked and webcams can turn on themselves. I remember my laptop back in the day that there wasn't even a light to show that the webcam was on, right? And so I was very hesitant on webcams in my house. Unfortunately, her father didn't have a problem with webcams, as he stated on the documentary. So when Amanda moved with him, her computer had a webcam.
Was it like a significant, like, was this a big deal when she got access to a webcam, or was it just something you disagreed? He was okay with it. She got it. Like, was it a big conversation? It was. Okay.
It was a big deal for me. However, we were split at that time. And I don't know if you've had conversations with families that are split.
And then I grew up in broken families. I get it.
Yeah, there are different rules. So I basically this was my house. From Amanda's father, this is my house. These are my rules. You have nothing to do with them. So Amanda would come. Initially, she lived with me, right? So she had access to technology. There were no webcams, nothing. She couldn't, right? However, when she went to her father's house, she had access to a webcam.
And were your concerns with a webcam, were they more about like privacy, or did your mind even go to the possibility of, my 15-year-old daughter on the internet, could be a victim? Or or again, was it more like, I don't want someone hacking her webcam or something? Like, what would have been your fears before this all happened?
It wasn't until after the image of her popped up that I even thought of webcams in that way. I just didn't think that a young child under 13 needed a webcam. What do you need a webcam for?
Yeah.
Right? If you want to talk to somebody, pick up the landline, because we still had a landline. You don't need people seeing you, and you don't need to see other people. That's was my thought.
I don't know if there's any way to know exactly, but from the point she got the webcam, is there any indication of like how long she was safe before she found herself being victimized? Do you have any idea?
Well, she moved in with her father when she was 13, and it was that year that she first got the access to the webcam. So she would have gotten access in February of her 13th year, and then the police came to my door December of that same year.
Wow.
And so I would think backtrack it for another 4 months, and so that was when she was being groomed.
You mentioned the police showing up at your door. She was dealing with this, what was happening to her, she was dealing with privately before you were aware of it. Did you notice any change in her, or was there any like red flags, or was this a complete surprise when you found out what was going on? Like, did it seem like anything unusual was happening?
I was blindsided by the RCMP coming to my door, but you have to remember that she wasn't living with me at the time, right? And so we had mother-daughter angst because she was high-spirited. She didn't like my rules, and so for a little while there, she just shut me out of her conversations, right? According to her dad, he didn't see anything out of the sort, except that she just was glommed onto her computer and communicating with others.
Yeah. Well, tell me about this, is how you learned this was actually happening. Like, maybe describe the RCMP showing up at your door, what they had to say and how you handled that.
Well, they arrived at my door at about 10:30 at night on December 23rd of 2010. And Amanda was at her father's. And so we knew that Amanda wasn't online because she had the flu and she was actually hugging a toilet bowl, right, for a few days. Now, whether this Amanda not being online was what angered the predator to put her image on an adult pornography site and then share the link, hopefully we'll find out, but I doubt it. And so I had received a link on my messaging about this. I did happen to click it, and I saw. But what brought the RCMP to my door was that one of Amanda's friends had seen it and then told her parent, who then called the police, reported it, and then the police had to do a safety check because it's labeled child pornography, right? So that's when I had a conversation with the police officer, and he told me what had happened, what was reported. I told him that I had received the link too, and because Amanda wasn't here, he had to rush off and do the safety check of Amanda at her father's house.
And just when you say you got the link, you mean just like someone messaged you on Facebook or something that someone you didn't know, presumably?
Yeah, it was IM. What's IM stand for?
Instant messaging. So probably Windows Messenger or MSN Messenger is what you're thinking?
She was on MSN Messenger, right?
Okay.
And said, this link's about your daughter. You need to see it and know what your daughter's doing, yada, yada, right? I ended up printing all that out. And so I told the RCMP that this had appeared, and they just told me to ignore it. Just ignore it.
Yeah, it's
that person will go away. Mm. Well, yeah, easier said than done. And then it was Christmas. So Amanda has started getting messages from her peers. Some were, "Are you okay? We saw this," and others were, "You're a slut, you're a hoe. We saw your picture." Other people had screen captured it already and were resharing it. Luckily, it was winter break. However, Amanda was really hesitant and really scared to go back to school when winter break was over. And as we know, it was justified.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So, but at the point you find out, when the RCMP show up at your door, it's full blown. It's being sent around to people by, anonymously. So it's already happening. When do you get the chance to talk to her to get the background on what's been going on? Because there was, like, she had privately been handling or trying to handle this herself. Like, can you describe, like, when you get the chance to talk to Amanda and find out what she's been dealing with?
Well, she did end up coming back to my house, except she was still sick, right? So she was in no mood to talk. And she truly didn't want to talk about this because for her, it was embarrassing. She was afraid of what would happen because the answer back then was, if you do something bad, you get something taken away. And she was afraid of losing her technology. So she became a little insolent about sharing what was happening and sort of relegated it to, it was nothing. It was, it'll go away. But she was more concerned about her peers now sharing and cyberbullying, bullying, whatever you want to call it, in real life. And that's what predators and extortionists do, right? If you don't do this, then I'm going to share it with everyone. The threats are there so that it builds fear. Now, you have to remember that this whole thing started because Amanda was posting her videos on YouTube of her singing, and the communication on YouTube, because there is that back and forth. It's not a private chat, but it's a public chat, right? And then it was, you have a great voice, you're really pretty. I'd love to hear more of you singing. Can you sing to my friends? Can we move this to Skype? Because Skype. And so they moved all their chats over to a different platform. And then it sort of come into this room and sing for my friends. But little did we know that these weren't 16-year-olds. They were adult men, presumably, right? And that was what the online grooming was all about. You gain the trust, and then you learn about your victim. By then, your victim is sharing. And Amanda, just like a lot of other young individuals, right? They're vulnerable. And initially, Amanda didn't know who she was talking to, right? She thought she was talking to another 16-year-old boy. It turns out to be an older man.
And as he's talking to her, he's also learning who her friends are, who her family is. And I can only assume he was doing that as a way to use it as ammunition for extortion attempts, because my understanding is it got to the point where he was eventually, at this point, an anonymous character was requiring her to perform or do things to prevent him from sharing her image. Is that right?
Amanda, she was vulnerable. And it could be, family situations, the disabilities that she had herself, the ADHD that she had, like everything made her just a prime target, right? And research says that an online predator out there, after talking to an individual for the first couple minutes, knows how vulnerable that person is at the other end. Because if that person shows strength, they'll just move on to the next person, mm-hmm. right? It's a goldfish pond out there.
All right. So now with Amanda's story, this photo is shared to various people, including yourself. The RCMP get involved. Was the belief that it was stopped? Like, did you feel like anything was fixed and it was just that photo was out there? And if not, like, when did the point come where you're like, whoa, this is, still happening?
Well, the answer from the RCMP was to take Amanda off the internet. Mm-hmm. And so we agreed to do that, right? Give it a rest. Amanda had screen time, but it wasn't internet connected, mm-hmm. right? And then after what, 2.5, 3 months, we decided that we could reintroduce it to her and with guidelines, mm-hmm. right? And as soon as that happened, boom, that image was reshared and she got recontacted by her alleged predator, mm-hmm. saying that, you need to do more shows or else your life will be over. And you saw that on the Fifth Estate. Mm-hmm. There was a point where I got a phone call from Amanda, and she had just received a message from the predator saying that her picture was going to be shared in her new school district and her old school district, right? And so I worked in her old school district. And so with the help of my administrator, we contacted the RCMP and the right people to make sure to shut it down. And funny enough, a couple of years ago, I was at a conference and I bumped into an IT guy in the school district Amanda was going to at the time. And he told me that, yeah, I remember that story. Such a horrible story. I was like, well, I'm her mom. And then the conversation evolves from there, right? And then he said, I remember that an email coming through that we were supposed to look for this picture of that would come and be shared, because you can go online and you can get school district emails, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this guy did. He tried to share it, except it got blocked. Wow. Right, by the IT departments in the school districts, so mm-hmm. it didn't go out any further. But he was after her after 2.5 months of Amanda being dormant, and so contacted the RCMP again, keep her off the internet. Okay, yeah, well, and try that again, and then so now we're talking December and then March, and then let's go to July, and it was summer, so let her have some social media, right? Some technology time. Boom, happens again, right? Except this time, the predator created a Facebook page and used the image Amanda that he had been sharing of Amanda as a Facebook profile picture until Facebook took it down. Now, my problem was I clearly remember that July day. Amanda's in a panic. I'm in a panic. And we're trying to figure out a way to contact Facebook to make sure it comes down. That was hard.
I bet, yeah.
Back then, there was very few. I couldn't even find a reporting tool on it, right? And eventually it came down because it was child pornography. But for the few hours that it was up, it did enough damage.
Mm. And I also just think of from her point of view, it's like you'll have these 2 months where she's off the internet and kind of away from that. And every time she comes back, it's just like he's there. It almost seems like just, like the shadow following her from experience to experience. So that must have really weighed on her. And you talked about her changing schools. And I understand like there was a lot that was being done to try to help her, get back on her feet, including changing schools. Like I believe the school change was as a result of the bullying she was receiving in real life.
Yes and no.
No.
some of the school changes were due to her father moving, right? So then she changed schools, and then her father moved to another community. So then she started school in another community, and moving schools is really hard, especially mid-year, and especially when you're 13 years old. So that change was really hard for her. Plus, the alleged predator creating a new Facebook page with a persona, and I heard this as a fact, was saying things to gain friends. He would say, hey, I'm coming to your school and I'm friends with so-and-so, and it'd be great to, be able to walk in on the first day and know some people. Would you, can we be Facebook buddies or whatever? And then it was the yes, okay, approve, right? And as soon as he acquired 200 of people that Amanda knew, he shared the image. And so when Amanda starts a new school, that image has already circulated, right? To people some people she doesn't even really know. They're just people on Facebook. And it was when this image continued to be put out there, the real life abuse, the bullying and the cyber harassment continued in real life. And so not only does Amanda have this predator to contend with, she has the real life shit to contend with too, right? It just made it really hard.
Yeah, that's like to be 13, 14, be changing schools. That's a horrifying experience as it is. Then to add this on top of it, and just I can imagine the fear of like, when is this person going to pop up next? And like, although I could never imagine truly what she was dealing with, but I can try to put myself there, and it's
Yep. And she was dealing with school, right? All of a sudden, like in the first school district she went to, she had all the supports for her learning disability. And in the new school district, it took them a long time to figure out that she even had disabilities because the files never got transferred fast enough, right? And so that was challenging too, because here she is sitting in a new school with not many people she knows, with a predator after her, with a reputation out there, and not understanding a single thing that's being taught in class because she's come in mid-year.
Wow.
Right. And then she got known as the dumb kid, the stupid bitch, right? Because she wasn't able to comprehend what was being done in English class. And so it was really sad. It was just a whole bunch of things that built up, and it was, I use two scenarios. It's like Amanda was a full onion and layers were being peeled off her till there was nothing left. And the other scenario analogy is like a balloon where so much pressure was being put on her that she eventually popped.
Yeah. And as this is happening, I'm assuming there was some search for like, who is this predator? How do we stop this person? Was there ever any indication who this person may have been?
No, because in 2010, like we weren't looking at IP addresses, and the answer was stay offline and things will get better, right? There was nothing about doing a search, an IP search. I look back at it, and do I feel angry? Yes. Could more have been done? Probably. But there were limited tools and limited knowledge back in 2010. I mean, you think about how much you knew 10 years ago, 11 years ago, right? Since then, and since so many stories like Amanda's have appeared, there has been more education and more awareness out there, even for law enforcement. Is there room for more? Yes, there's room for way more.
Amanda really did everyone a favor with the video she created. And we'll have to talk a little bit about that. Is with everything that she was dealing with, whatever difficulty she had in communication and language, it seemed like there was like a director who was assisting her with finding the perfect way to get her story out there. And that's the video that everybody from now has either seen the video or seen a screenshot where she's flipping through the cards and decides to share her story in a way that I can't think of another example of someone her age putting something together that was that creative yet effective. Tell me the story of how this video came to be and what you knew about it before, the world saw it, basically.
I have to say that a lot of people have asked me if it was a suicide note video, and it wasn't. It was Amanda wanting to share her story. She was tired of, she created that in the summer of 2012, right? So let's go backwards in the timeline. So December 2010, the RCMP arrived at the door. March 2011, right? New school, but new set of people, new set of young people know about the picture. They bully and cyberbully her. She goes through more anxiety, more stress, more angst. Then in July, it happens again. Then in November of 2011, it happens again, right? February of 2012, Amanda gets assaulted by a group of kids who also share pictures and make fun of her. So the real life harassment continued. The predator had stopped in November of 2011, right? And so these kids just kept at her. July of 2012, I remember because I was actually teaching summer school at the time. I get a phone call and Amanda had gotten hold of all her antidepressants and taken multiples, right? So I rushed home. We got her to the hospital and that was declared a suicide attempt, right? From July until September the 8th, or September 7th, she posted the video. September 8th, she stayed in the house. We did walks on our street, but she never really left the house or my care, my eyes, for 3 months. It was in that 3 months that, being in her room, she hatched out her plans to make this video. I did not know anything about it until she told me the night of September 7th after she posted it. I didn't know. And when I did watch it with her shortly after she posted it, I gave her crap because she put her name on it. You know how you're not supposed to put your name on it? And her words to me was, hey, Mom, there's lots of Amanda Todds in the world, but I didn't show my face. And I asked her why she did it. And she said that she just wanted to tell her story, that there were others out there who continued to belittle and harass and slut shame and name call her, that she was just tired of it and she was taking her own voice back. And so this was the way that she was going to take her voice back. I was impressed because with a child with a learning disability, that was a big task in sequencing her story out and remembering it and writing it all out, but writing just the right amounts on each card. And she had no help. I can honestly say she had no help. I guess she had all summer to work on this, but that has become her legacy. Because if she hadn't created that, we wouldn't be talking. Probably. She would have just been another statistic of a young person who died by suicide, and that would be it.
Yeah, and I don't think there's even any speculation in saying that. Like I'm confident that ensured her story to be shared, and like I can't even imagine how many people would have seen that video at this point.
If you add up all the shares, like all the copies people have made to repost, it's about 50 million.
Now, with the video being made, how long from the time she shared that video is it that she passes?
She posted the video September 7th. She ended up back in the hospital on September 8th due to a situation. However, I have to say that she posted it on September 7th after being in the house for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And she said to me on the morning of September 8th that she wanted to go out and get her hair done, get her nails done, go to the store, buy some snacks, and have some friends over. And they were going to go out for a walk. And I said, like, really? Out? You want to go out and get your hair done? And she said, yes, I'm ready, because I shared my story. I feel free, right? And then something else happened with the peers that landed her back into the hospital again. We have, it just never stopped, mm-hmm. right? I wish I had probably stepped in a bit more forcefully with the peers, knowing what I know now. And so she died October 10th. Okay. And she posted it September 7th, so about 5 weeks. And ironically, a lot of her friends, like Justin Bieber, was in town in Vancouver on October 10th of 2012. Amanda wanted to go, but because of her anxieties, she couldn't. And so many of her friends found out that she had died sitting in the Justin Bieber concert, as looking at their messages, because as soon as it got out there, it went viral. And then as soon as people in Amanda's circle found out, they started resharing her video, which then the media got a hold of, and Amanda landed up on the front page of the Vancouver Sun, right? Because of her video. And I also believe that because of her video, the BC government got involved and the investigation was reopened in terms of Amanda and her predator and the real-life bullying too.
We begin tonight with a cry for help, heard around the world but heard too late. Her name was Amanda Todd. She was 15 years old, and she killed herself after years of being victimized by bullies in person and online. Less than a month before her death, the Port Coquitlam teen posted a video telling her heartbreaking story.
To see it now after it's happened, it's tough. It's tough to see that.
At Reynolds High, you'd be hard-pressed to find a student who hasn't seen it. Since taking her own life Wednesday, Todd's online cry for help has been seen around the world. From tributes to headlines, her story is everywhere, leaving many wondering how such a blatant cry for help could go unnoticed.
This girl tried to find a safe place for herself over and over and over.
For now and maybe forever, Todd's story remains online, a permanent reminder of how damaging a few strokes of a keyboard can be.
How did you find out about Amanda? You mentioned her friends were at the Justin Bieber concert. From your position, how does a parent find out that happened?
I had spoken to her in the early afternoon. She was scheduled for a counseling appointment. Unfortunately, the counselor had a family emergency and had to cancel. And so I called Amanda and shared that with her. No one can go back in time, right? The what ifs will literally kill you if people go back into the what ifs. Mm-hmm. I talked to Amanda probably about 4:00 and wanted to know how she was. She had been home a few days, not feeling well from school. And it was Thanksgiving weekend also, right? There was a situation that happened with an ex-boyfriend that weekend. I phoned her about 4, asked her if she was okay, and did she want me to bring home some ginger ale or some ice cream? She said, "No, I'm good, Mom." And then we hung up. And you know what? She did say, "I love you," but I never thought anything of it. And then I went to the grocery store and came home, found her, called 911. And the hardest thing about is trying to breathe life back into your child when you know you can't. And those images will be in my mind forever, right? So that was about 6:30. No, actually, 20 to 6. 6:30 is when it hit me. Like, you're in shock. And then the shock actually stays, but it hit me at 6:30 when you walk out into the street and you see like literally dozens of emergency vehicles there, and you know what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I won't describe what I found because I don't believe it's important.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm asked to do a documentary and people say, well, can you tell about what you saw when Amanda died? And I'll explain it. And some people look at me like I'm nuts. Like, why wouldn't you share it? It's because it's not part of my personal philosophy to share that. And if I had Amanda's friends listening to, say, your podcast or this documentary, I really want them to remember Amanda as their friend, as their bright light, as that kid that's running from bush to bush, hiding, playing hide and seek. I don't want them to remember what I saw. I am the only person that's seen it, and I'm the only person that can spew it out. And so when you go to Wikipedia, they're assuming, because I've never really talked about it.
And I can respect that 100%. And one part of this that I think for people who weren't following this story when it happened, that's really, I find unimaginable, is you deal with this, you find your daughter, you lose your daughter. It seems like it's like the next day it's international news, and I'm assuming your phone is just ringing off the hook. Like, how long from finding your daughter and losing her is it that there's so many demands for you to give statements, and you're seeing her story, everywhere? Because this, like, at least from my point of view, it seems like it blew up immediately.
It did blow up. And then I have a very strong network of friends and work colleagues. And so I had a house full of people who were making sure that I was okay, that I had a friend who was manning my telephone, my landline. I had another one who was with my cell phone, looking at the messages. And I still have the notebooks that they were taking the messages down on. And so I looked back on it a couple of years ago, and I saw someone had scrawled that Anderson Cooper show had called and wanted an interview. And it was incredible, like, to see Amanda's image on the front page of the newspaper, to hear her on the news like for a week every day, right? To see who was calling. I did one radio interview where the radio host blindsided me with a question. So that put me off on interviews. If you look, the only interview I really talked to was the Vancouver Sun. Every other interview was just regurgitation of something else. And so when CBC first got in touch with me and wanted a full interview, I said to them, if you come back in 6 weeks, I'll sit down with you. But for now, it's sensationalized. It's sensationalism, right? Everyone wants a piece of it. And so I swore that I didn't want to be on the news as, in my grief, in my shock and my grief, telling Amanda's story shortly after her death. I wasn't prepared. I wouldn't have been in control. And the news people just want a story. So CBC did come back 6 weeks later. I did an interview with them, And then I approved the Fifth Estate to do a story too.
Mhm.
They were the only one that came back 6 weeks later.
Wow. One thing I want to get into as well. I know this is something that we've talked about Amanda's story always being, used as examples and brought up again, but she's been in the news, or her story's been in the news again, because the quest for justice seems to finally be maybe getting a little closer. What I'd like to hear is like after she passed away, I guess the idea of finding the predator seemed pretty far away. Like, did you think you were ever going to get a look at, who was largely responsible for a lot of this? Like, did you think he would ever be identified?
After Amanda died, we sort of forgot about the predator. I mean, the news cycle brought it up, but after what the RCMP said in terms of we'd never be able to locate who had done this to Amanda, sort of gave up on it, right? And then in April of 2014, I received a phone call that the RCMP wanted to meet with Amanda's dad and I, and had some information to tell us. And so when we met with them, they told us that a man had been caught in the Netherlands, and they were going to lay charges on him against Amanda's case, but he was also charged with victimizing 39 other individuals with extortion, money extortion, and exploitation also. And so was I surprised? I was very surprised. And I've learned along the way how it came to be. If you watch the Fifth Estate, the second Fifth Estate, you can hear it again, how it came to be.
Yeah, and everything to do with this person and how he was found, it's its own separate story. And like you said, there was 39 other victims. Was it minors as well, or was it a mix of people that he was victimizing or alleged to be victimizing? I guess he was convicted of some of them at this point.
Out of the 39 victims in the Netherlands, 5 of them were adult gay males, and 34 of them were young girls, just like Amanda. And it's assumed that there are more victims out there.
Absolutely.
But they couldn't be found because there's still a hard drive that couldn't be broken into.
Wow.
Right? By law enforcement out there, or even, however, I don't know if they get Interpol, because these victims were from different countries. They weren't just all from Amsterdam. They were from Scotland, the US, Norway, the UK. And so it was very glad to hear someone had been caught. And how it came to be, Canada wanted to trial Aiden Kuban separately, so they laid their own charges against him. So Amanda's case wasn't lumped in with the 39 victims for that trial. She's totally separate.
Okay. And what do, like, for people who haven't been following the story closely, what do you know, or what do we know about this Aiden Kuban? Like, what is his background?
He was about approximately 34, 35 when he was first arrested in 2014. I mean, I can interject my own opinions about what he is. However, I'm not sure I can do that right now, because there's a pending trial for Amanda's case, and it becomes that anything that I say can be used against, because I'm projecting. So we can talk again at the end of this year.
Well, let's say that. Let's talk about it this way then. Is he had a trial he was convicted in the Netherlands for those other cases. He's now in this, I think, surprised a lot of people. He is now either in or on his way to Canada to finally face charges for related to Amanda. Am I right with that?
The court hearing in the Netherlands was February of 2017. I had always had the opportunity to decide if I wanted to attend or not attend. And media was always asking me if I was going to go or not. And I initially decided I wasn't going to go because what's the point? It was a long ways away. Then in December of 2016, I decided that maybe it would be a good idea to go in case he doesn't end up here, but I want to see him face to face. And so a group of friends started a crowdsourcing and raised money to get me to Amsterdam.
Nice.
And I was at the hearing in February of 2017. I got to see him face to face in the courtroom.
What was that like?
It was different. It was easier. I think it'll be different when I see him again, when the trial is here in Vancouver, than when I saw him before, because the court cases weren't about Amanda. They were about the other victims. And my heart was with the other victims. And I had sort of left part of Amanda at home, if that makes sense. I was literally about 8 feet away from him. It was just eerie.
It's been more than 8 years since 15-year-old Amanda Todd committed suicide. 42-year-old Aidan Coban, a convicted online predator from half a world away, has now landed in Canada to face justice.
Global News has learned Coban landed in BC December 7th. He made his first court appearance the day after. He is facing 5 charges in connection to the Todd case, including extortion, possession of child pornography, communication with a young person to commit a sexual offense, and criminal harassment.
Coban was arrested in 2014 at his cottage in the Netherlands for exploiting dozens of victims from multiple countries, luring them to share nude images online. He was sentenced to 11 years in a Dutch jail for fraud and blackmail. Todd's case never tried overseas. Her mother now preparing for trial. Coban's arrival in Canada never announced by the BC Prosecution Service. His next court appearance, February 12th.
You must have, like, when you heard he was coming here to face charges, like, that must have been, was that a good feeling? Where, like, do you feel like justice is near? Like, what are your thoughts going into this new trial?
Well, it's closing that circle even more, right? That there will be justice for Amanda, and we hope that a technicality of something doesn't make it go away, like doesn't give that justice, doesn't take that justice away. I'm not really thinking about it. I mean, I think about it, but I'm not thinking about it until it gets closer, right? Things can be pushed, so things can be detained. It's been a long wait. And if I had held it really tight for since 2014, I would be more of a mess, right? So I'm just gonna wait and see and make sure that this happens in the fall. And then I'm not really thinking about how I'm going to feel in that courtroom, or coming up to the first day, or even sitting down and writing my victim impact statement. I'll think about it as it gets closer. I just can't. I can't. It's hard enough that Amanda story's out there, and we continue to talk about it in a good way, but also as a parent, it brings up everything, and it takes a lot of effort to bring it back down to a normal.
Well, let me end with this: is for people who want to support you and support Amanda and follow the story, what is the best place to access, the current information, or to get involved in the legacy? Like, where would you recommend people go to learn more or contribute?
Well, there's amandatoddlegacy.org, and it's a website that we have set up. There's a contact button. And I encourage people to contact if they would like a resource or if they need some support or a question answered. There's a donate button. There's lots of information on resources worldwide related to mental health, related to exploitation, bullying, cyberbullying. And it's not just geared to kids, it's geared to all, because I think that it's all that can be affected. We're also on Twitter. There's under the Legacy, or under me personally, and on Facebook, it's under Amanda Todd Legacy Staying Strong, or I have a personal account that people can get in touch with me at. We've got Instagram. The world is social media in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so we're sharing Amanda's story and whatever safety measures come with education and awareness through our social media, because we can't be everywhere. And so we'll make it accessible for all.
Only other thing is with Amanda's name and face and story being used far and wide as a sort of cautionary tale, like how do you feel she would see this? Like, would she be proud to see her story causing so much, positive change?
I believe she would. Remember that her whole goal to put singing videos on YouTube was she wanted to be famous one day. Unfortunately, her notoriety came at a price, but Amanda is very known out there in the world by a lot of people, by young people, by older people, by those who have experienced similar situations, or parents and kids who have used Amanda's story to share with each other situations. And so being able to help others through Amanda's legacy is so important. There was a situation the other weekend where a lady had contacted me 6 years ago. Her daughter had died by suicide in the United States, and the mother was just in despair. And so she contacted me one night, and she was at work. Her employer wouldn't let her go to the hospital. She was feeling like she was going to end her life. And when she messaged me, I asked her where she lived, and we found her a crisis line, which she called, and it was a mobile unit, so they actually came to her. Wow. And so the next morning she thanked me, because she said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be alive. And so that's all because of Amanda's story and her legacy.
I want to thank you for joining Carol and I in our discussion regarding the life, the death, and the legacy of her daughter, Amanda. This story is as horrific as it is cruel, but I think it's very important. Technology has placed vulnerable people like Amanda in a position where they can be preyed upon by unseen forces. But by knowing the dangers, parents, law enforcement, and society as a whole can plan how we deal with it. And with that, I'll begin wrapping up this episode. But first, I'm going to give some thanks. Carol Todd, your ability to squeeze the positive from this tragedy is nothing short of inspiring. The world is certainly a better place to raise children in, thanks to your work. I thank you for your strength and for your advocacy. Next, a big shout out to Monty Data for contributing the music for this episode. It's a piece called Noir Tokyo. And lastly, a massive thank you to everyone who listens to Nighttime. Without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. But with that said, keeping the show alive is and has always been an uphill battle. So if you want to help take a bit of weight off the show's back, please consider subscribing to the premium feed. Not only does it make the show possible, it'll give you more of each topic than you're going to find here on the free feed, as I'm adding exclusive content almost weekly. So for about the price of a cup of coffee, help keep the show alive by subscribing to the premium feed at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And having said that, let me thank the newest supporters of the show. Christine, Matt, Samantha, Aaron, and Ali, thank you for your generous support. And for anyone else out there who'd like to support the show, you can give me a hand by simply sharing the episodes on social media or letting your friends know about what we're doing here. If you have any story ideas or if you want to give feedback on the show, reach me at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. And I'm also on social media using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm live on YouTube most Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday nights at 9:15 Eastern. So until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and please send positive thoughts to Amanda Todd's loved ones as they approach what will certainly be a very challenging trial.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte. Copyright Jordan Bonaparte.
If you're a young person and you're assigned a project on cyberbullying or online safety, your Google search will bring up Amanda's name somewhere in that list, right? And then it leads people to the videos and they watch it and then they're horrified by the story. And Amanda's is a real story. It's not made up. It's not a Netflix made for Netflix movie, right? Mm-hmm. It's a real life story that we have to we can dissect and tear apart and learn from.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.